Okay, this is part 29 of Nos4a2. The laundry chute. Vic was, at 17, only 40 pounds heavier and 3 inches taller than she had been at 12, a skinny girl who was all leg. But it was tight inside the chute just the same. She braced herself back to the wall, knees in her face, feet pressing to the opposite side of the shaft. Vic began to work her way up the shaft, pushing herself with the balls of her feet 6 inches at a time. Brown smoke wafted around her and stung her eyes. Her hamstrings began to twitch and burn. She slid her back up another 6 inches, walking up the shaft in a hunched, bent, grotesque sort of way. The muscles in the small of her back throbbed. She was halfway to the second floor when her left foot slipped, squirting out beneath her, and her ass dropped. She felt a tearing in her right thigh, and she screamed. For one moment she was unable to hold herself in place, folded over with her right knee in her face and her left leg hanging straight down. But the weight of her right leg was too much. The pain was too much. She let her right foot slide free and fell all the way back to the bottom. It was a painful, ungraceful fall. She clouded into the aluminum floor of the shaft, spiked her right knee into her own face. Her other foot banged through the stainless steel hatch and shot back into the pantry. Vic was, for a moment, dangerously close to panic. She began to cry, and when she stood up in the laundry chute, she did not try to climb again, but began to jump, and never mind that the top was well out of reach, and there was nothing in the smooth aluminum shaft to grab. She screamed. She screamed for help. The shaft was full of smoke, and it blurred her vision, and mid-scream she began to cough, a harsh, dry, painful cough. She coughed on, did not think she would ever stop. She coughed with such force she almost threw up, and in the end spit a long stream of saliva that tasted of bile. It was not the smoke that terrified her, or the pain in the back of her right thigh, where she had definitely yanked a muscle. It was her certain, desperate aloneness. What had her mother screamed at her father? "But you're not raising her, Chris. I am. I'm doing it all by myself." It was awful to find yourself in a hole all by yourself. She could not remember the last time she had held her mother, her frightened, short-tempered, unhappy mother, who had stood by her and put her cool hand to Vic's brow in her times of fever. It was awful to think of dying here, having left things as they were. Then she was making her way up the shaft again, back to one wall, feet to the other. Her eyes gushed. The smoke was thick in the chute now, a brownish billowing steam all around her. Something was terribly wrong in the back of her right leg. Every time she pushed upward with her feet, it felt as if the muscle were tearing all over again. She blinked and coughed and pushed and wormed her way steadily up the laundry chute. The metal against her back was uncomfortably warm. She thought that in a very short time she would be leaving skin on the walls, that the chute would burn to the touch. Except it wasn't a chute anymore. It was a chimney, with a smoky fire at the bottom, and she was Santa Claus, scrambling up for the reindeer. She had that idiot Christmas song in her head, "Have a holly jolly fucking Christmas," going around and around on endless loop. She didn't want to roast to death with Christmas music in her head. By the time she was close to the top of the chute, it was hard to see anything through all the smoke. She wept continuously and held her breath. The big muscle in her right thigh shook helplessly. She saw an inverted U of dim light somewhere just above her feet, the hatch that opened on the second floor. Her legs burned. She gasped, couldn't stop herself, drew a chestful of smoke, began to cough. It hurt to cough. She could feel soft tissues behind her ribs rupturing and tearing. Her right leg gave without warning. She lunged as she fell, shoving her arms at the closed hatch. As she did, she thought, "It won't open." He pushed something in front of it, and it won't open. Her arms banged through the hatch out into beautifully cool air. She held on, caught the edge of the opening under her armpits. Her legs dropped down into the chute, and her knees clubbed the steel wall. With the hatch open, the laundry chute drew air, and she felt a hot, stinking breeze lifting around her. Smoke gushed out around her head. She couldn't stop coughing and blinking, coughing so hard her whole body shook. She tasted blood, felt blood on her lips, wondered if she was coughing up anything important. For a long moment she hung where she was, too weak to pull herself out. Then she began to kick, digging her toes against the wall. Her feet clanked and banged. She could not grab much purchase, but she did not need much. Her head and arms were already through the hatch, and getting out of the chute was less a matter of climbing, more a thing of simply leaning forward. She tipped herself out and onto the shag carpet of a second-floor hallway. The air tasted good. She laid there and gasped like a fish. Blessed what a blessed if painful thing this business of being alive. She had to lean against the wall to get to her feet. She expected the entire house to be filled with smoke and roaring fire, but it was not. It was hazy in the upstairs hallway, but not as bad as it had been in the chute. Vic saw sunshine to her right and limped across the bushy 1970s-era carpet to the landing at the top of the stairs. She descended the steps in a stumbling, controlled fall, splashing through smoke. The front door was half open. The chain hung from the door frame, with the lock plate and a long splinter of wood dangling from it. The air that came in was watery cool, and she wanted to pitch herself out into it, but she did not. She could not see into the kitchen. It was all smoke and flickering light. An open doorway looked into a sitting room. The wallpaper on the far side of the sitting room was burning away to show the plaster underneath. The rug smoldered. A vase contained a bouquet of flame. Streams of orange fire crawled up cheap white nylon curtains. She thought the whole back of the house might be in flame, but here in the front, in the foyer, the hallway was only filled with smoke. Vic looked out the window to one side of the door. The drive leading up to the house was a long, narrow dirt lane leading away through the trees. She saw no car, but from this angle she could not see into the garage. He might be sitting there waiting to see if Vic would come out. He might be down at the end of the lane watching to see if she would run up it. Behind her, something creaked painfully and fell with a great crash. Smoke erupted behind her. A hot spark touched her arm and stung, and it came to her that there was nothing left to think about. He was waiting there or he wasn't, but either way there was no place left for her to go except